And then I'm going to share my screen. Well, thank you for joining me this evening. This is what I've called in the past the State of Oregon Statewide Master Gardener Program Update. My name is Gail Langellotto. If you would like to reach me after this presentation, you can find me pretty easily via a Google search. I'm the only Gail Langellotto, I think, that exists in the world at this current moment in time. Gail.langellotto@oregonstate.edu is my email address and the best way to contact me. A little bit of background about this talk. This talk is normally a presentation that I give every year at mini college. The OMGA is always so generous, the Oregon Master Gardener Association is always so generous to provide me space on their platform in order to share what's been happening at OSU within the Master Gardener program. At this talk, I normally review the previous year's events and challenges and provide a little bit of an overview of strategic directions that we're taking. Just a quick note that since the Master Gardener reporting year runs from November 1st to October 31st of every year, we still have not tallied up the numbers for 2020. That's going to happen after October 31st. So this is also a good reminder that if you have yet to submit your volunteer hours for 2020, please do so. Technically, they're due October 31st. If you can't get them in by that time, please get them in as soon as you can, close to that date. And these pictures on the slide are just some pictures from mini college past. I really love that one at the bottom right from about 2009. At Mini College every year, we also honor the statewide Master Gardener Award winners. And since Mini College was canceled this year because of COVID-19, I really just wanted to take a moment to honor our 2020 award winners. And that would be Barbara Davidson of Jackson County, who was our Master Gardener of the Year, and Michael O'Laughlin of Yamhill County, who was the behind the scenes awardee. We also didn't have a mini college in 2019, so I wanted to take a moment to honor those statewide award winners as well. There were co-Master Gardeners of the Year in 2019. They were Toby Haybeck. Let's see if I can do my pointer. They were Toby Haybeck from Marion County and Eric Bossler from the Central Gorge region. And our behind the scenes award winner was Jim Liskey from Marion County as well. I really just wanted to take a moment to give those Master Gardeners their due to a statewide audience, since we didn't get the chance to honor them face to face at Mini College like we normally would. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gail Langellotto, and I am your statewide Master Gardener Program Lead at Oregon State University. I'm trained as an entomologist. My graduate degrees are in entomology from the University of Maryland, and I did my postdoctoral work in entomology at UC Davis. So my background is not in horticulture, but I have long studied insects and garden systems, and that's part of what brought me here to Oregon State University way back in 2007. I do want to give you a little bit of context for my particular position, in part because I really do love the Master Gardener program so much, and there are so many wonderful things that I think we can achieve through the Master Gardener program. But time and resources are a constant struggle. The Master Gardener program is only a small portion of my overall position description. I do coordinate the Home Horticulture Working Group and teach Master Gardener and public gardening classes across the state. But I also teach undergraduate and graduate classes at Oregon State University, primarily in entomology, but I also contribute to the urban agriculture classes and certificate program at OSU. In addition to teaching and outreach work, I also have an applied research program, which we call the Garden Ecology Lab Group. Currently, I have 6 student researchers, 1 postdoctoral researcher, and 2 online instructors that are part of that lab group. And so all of these things keep me really busy. But what I love about the challenge of this split position, this three-part position, is that I found over time that my teaching in undergraduate classrooms really makes my outreach and extension work better. My extension work really helps to inform my research. My research helps to inform them both so that they all support each other. I wanted to start this evening's presentation by going over and sharing with you the mission and vision of the OSU Extension Master Gardener Program. A mission is a description of what we do. Our vision is more of an aspirational statement, and together they both serve as kind of our guiding stars, our compass, our navigation points to help us make sure that we're really headed in the direction that we said we wanted to head. So our mission is that we cultivate resilient and healthy communities throughout Oregon via sustainable horticulture, education, and gardening projects that are rooted in science and that are supported by OSU Extension volunteers. Our vision is we provide accessible and equitable education programs that nurture lifelong learners and volunteers who can expand the reach and impact of science-based sustainable gardening practices to benefit all Oregonians. And I think it's important to keep both the mission and the vision in mind because there are a lot of gardening clubs, there are a lot of garden focus or affiliated nonprofits throughout Oregon. And so it's important to step back and think about what is it that makes Master Gardener different. One thing that makes us different is our strong connection to OSU, so that we help to make sure that the resources and research outcomes of OSU are made available to all Oregonians. And the other thing that makes us really grounded in our mission is that we have the strong focus on horticulture education. You know, we do have a lot of fun socializing with each other, working in the garden together, but at the core, we are a public service organization, which is focused on bringing education to all. So with those things in mind, I wanted to give examples of how we've met our mission and vision with a focus on the last year in particular. In 2019, there were slightly less than 3,000 Master Gardener volunteers across the state, and together these nearly 3,000 Master Gardener volunteers made nearly 140,000 public contacts. So every time you answer a gardening question in Plant Clinic, that is a single public contact. If you host a gardening roundtable and 20 people attend, those are 20 contacts. So altogether, all of the interactions that we've had across the state add up to almost 140,000 public contacts. What that means is that the knowledge and skills that Master Gardeners have gained, that Master Gardener volunteers have, is multiplied by 47 times in their local communities. That's definitely an example of expanding the reach and impact of science-based sustainable gardening information, which is part of our mission statement. Just a quick note about how Master Gardener volunteers really help to grow the confidence and the skills of gardeners across Oregon. The Master Gardener program started in 1973, of course, in Washington State, and one of the key foci of the Master Gardener program at that time was really to respond to the public's gardening questions, and that remains a core part of what Master Gardeners do. Some of you may be familiar with the Ask an Expert service, which is offered by OSU Extension and other land-grant universities across the state. I just think it's important to note that slightly less than 80% of all questions that come in through the OSU Ask an Expert system are gardening questions. In 2019, across the whole year, there were 6,271 gardening questions that were answered in this system. Just for the first half of 2020, there have been 7,352 gardening questions that have been answered through that system. I think it's important to note that currently there are 14 Extension Master Gardener volunteers and 14 Extension Master Gardener faculty. There are 28 people handling the bulk of those 7,300 questions. I put this up here because I think it gives a good visual of the public's demand for gardening knowledge, but we're going to return to this slide later in the talk when I talk about some of the challenges of the program. In 2019, 444 Master Gardener graduates completed the Master Gardener program. Remember, we don't yet have the count for 2020. Those numbers are not due until October 31st. And in 2019, those Master Gardeners who have long been part of our program accumulated 36,000 hours of continuing education credit. 36,000 hours of learning in the collective Master Gardener community, which is just so incredible and really speaks to the focus on sustainable horticulture education, which is part of our mission, as well as our vision to truly nurture lifelong learners as well as volunteers. In 2019, Master Gardeners supported work in 117 gardens across the state. Of these gardens, 29 of them were school gardens, 46 were community gardens, and 23 were teaching or demonstration gardens. From the combined total 117 gardens that Master Gardeners worked in, as well as via donations from private Master Gardener gardens, there were 52.5 tons of documented fresh food donated to local food banks and food pantries. And we suspect that this is largely an underestimate because not everyone is reporting the produce donations, particularly from their own private garden. This speaks to our mission of cultivating resilient and healthy communities across Oregon. And of course, growing food and helping others in their quest to grow food is a big passion of many gardeners and is a really important part of the work that we do within the Master Gardener program. And our partnerships with like-minded organizations, such as the Oregon Food Bank, really help us to meet our mission goals in ways that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do otherwise. So this particular slide is a table of an assessment of the Seed to Supper program that was done by Brooke Edmonds, Pammy Monet, both of OSU Extension, as well as Christine Hideckel, formerly of the Oregon Food Bank. And these three women did an assessment of Seed to Supper outcomes in 5 Oregon counties. And they were able to document that by and large, participants in Seed to Supper reported growing their own food, reducing the family food bill. Most ate more fruits and vegetables than normal. Most became aware of the fact that you actually can use SNAP benefits, not only to purchase food, but also to purchase seeds and plant starts. And they became of where they could go to get their gardening questions answered. So specifically, they became more aware of the Master Gardener program as a resource that can help them in their own gardening journey. And this idea of working with program partners to broaden outreach and broaden our impact in the communities that we serve. Another great example that I like to share is our partnership with Growing Gardens and the Let Us Grow program within Growing Gardens. So this particular program I love so much because it came about in 2009 when a Master Gardener was taking the online Master Gardener course. And at the same time, this Master Gardener, Sarah Van Roo, who no longer is in Oregon, she's in California now, she was teaching yoga at Coffee Creek Correctional Institution. And she said, I really think that my students would love access to this gardening curriculum. And at the time, it sounded like a great idea. So we said, well, let's make the sustainable gardening curriculum available to folks within correctional facilities. And from that initial offering way back in 2009, the program has now grown so that it's offered across 14 adult and 2 youth correctional facilities across Oregon. And it's also a program that's been adopted in several other states across the United States. The impact of the program cannot be understated in my assessment. Through 2017, the Department of Corrections were tracking folks who have taken the program and had been released from the correctional facility. Recidivism of that group was 4%, whereas statewide recidivism is about 31%. Of course, folks will say, and it is a good point to make, that the folks who participate in the sustainable gardening program, the Lettuce Grow program, it's somewhat a self-selected group from the larger population within the correctional facility. Normally, you have to meet specific benchmarks before you are cleared to participate in that program. Still, I think it's such a beautiful outcome. And I have to tell you, as somebody who has been a couple of times to teach in the correctional facilities, I absolutely love going there. Such dedicated students who really take great notes, come prepared to ask good questions, have their readings done, and are really proud to share with you the beautiful gardens that they tend. This, of course, also speaks to our vision of providing accessible and equitable education programs for all. Wanted to quickly say that through the work in my applied research program, we're also working to bring the research into those research-based recommendations. If folks have heard me speak in the past, you may have heard me say that one of the reasons I started the Garden Ecology Lab at OSU is because I realized that a lot of the recommendations which were being disseminated through the Master Gardener program were really discovered in agricultural systems. And agricultural systems are so different in size as well as in makeup from a typical home garden. So I really wanted to have scale and system-specific recommendations that we could offer to the general public through the Master Gardener program that were discovered in gardens. This is just an overview of the 8 projects that we're either wrapping up and writing up for publication, that we are working through data analysis on, or that we are just starting. And I hope to deliver a separate webinar giving you an update on some of these really exciting projects in the near future. Doing research in the Master Gardener program aligns with our mission of being rooted in science, as well as our vision of expanding the reach and impact of science-based sustainable gardening practices. I've been well aware that doing applied research as part of my position in the Master Gardener program, it's something I do because it's my passion. I really love science. I love entomology, but I also saw a need for it. I, however, recognized very early on that if we only did this research and published them in journal articles, that maybe 5 to 10 other academics might read the work. So we've really made a strong commitment to pushing our research results out there as soon as we can. We do it through our blog, the Garden Ecology Lab blog at Oregon State University. And this recent publication here on the left is a list of recommended native plants, their color, and their bloom phenology that are known to support pollinators in Oregon. And several of the plants that are on this list, including Globegilia, the lowleaf Phacelia, yarrow, were all ones that we included in some of our earlier research studies. This picture on the right is a picture of one of our field plots at the Oak Creek Center for Urban Horticulture on the OSU campus. One of the things that we found when we studied native plants and their attractiveness to pollinators and to gardeners is we found out, gardeners, you're a tough crowd. Globegilia was really the only flowering plant that we studied that was super attractive both to gardeners as well as to pollinators. So now we're looking at native cultivars and trying to see what their attractiveness is both to gardeners as well as to pollinators. And I would love to talk about that more, but I have other things to talk about. Wanted to go over a few key wins of the past year. I think it's important to celebrate the wins because it's been a difficult year, not gonna lie. So let's take a moment and pause for these wonderful things that have happened. This is a map of Oregon with all of the 36 counties of Oregon, and everywhere where there's a star is where we have a Master Gardener program. For many years, I was writing the annual report that I share with administrators and decision makers, and really trying to highlight all of the places where we had gaps in oversight of the Master Gardener program. So places where we did not have faculty members. So over the last year, there was an absence of a dedicated faculty member on the North Coast, in the Central Gorge region, as well as in Eastern Oregon. Now, keep in mind that these are all recent absences that occurred because people retired or they went on to other positions. And this occurred, we had these absences during COVID times when funding is tight and it was really difficult to get administrators to commit to rehiring into those positions. I'm really happy to say that this is what the map looks like today. We have filled the vacancy in Wasco County. Andrea Stith just recently started as the Master Gardener Program Coordinator in Wasco County. Prior to that, Megan Wickersham was hired to coordinate the program in Hood River County. And on December 1st, Julia Wenzel has been hired to coordinate the Master Gardener programs in Clatsop and Tillamook counties. All three of these women are superstars who bring a variety of skills and talent to the position and to the Master Gardener program, and I feel so lucky to be working with them. Andrea has a strong horticulture background and has worked with Extension in Kentucky. Julia has long-term collaborations with Food Roots on the North Coast. Megan brings a strong background in education that is benefiting the Master Gardener program in that region. Umatilla County, we still have a vacancy, but approval has been made to hire a coordinator for that position. So I just want to emphasize that Andrea, Julia, and the Umatilla County position, all of those decisions to hire have been made while Oregon State University was under the hiring freeze restriction, where every single position which is hired has to go through the provost for approval. And I really do think that that is a strong showing of how much this university believes in the Master Gardener program, believes that it merits resources when resources are pretty sparse at the moment. Also, during the hiring freeze, we were able to hire a new statewide Master Gardener Program Coordinator, Leanne Locker, who is also a Master Gardener in Multnomah County. It is a 0.6 FTE appointment, which comes out to about 3 days per week. Leanne was hired because there's this whole ecosystem of horticulture information on the OSU website. And honestly, it needs some care and it needs some curation, and I was not the person to do that. Gardening searches drive, once again, almost 80% of the traffic to the Extension website. So having somebody to help manage that content and share it in a way which is user-friendly and searchable was very important. Leanne was also tasked with developing an orientation and mentoring system for new Master Gardener coordinators. When we had our Master Gardener retreat in 2019, I'll always remember that Neil Bell, when we were discussing the need to come up with a mentoring system for new coordinators, said, we need to move from a waterboarding approach for onboarding new coordinators to like a positive onboarding approach. And that's really what Leanne has helped to do, serving as the person and point person to greet new coordinators when they come in, giving them suggestions for who to talk to get the lay of the land, being there to answer questions when my time is sparse. Leanne has also made significant contributions to our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the Master Gardener program, and I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of today's talk. Another big win for the Master Gardener program in 2019 was that in 2020, In June of 2020, Sherry Sheng and Spike Wadsworth, who are long-term supporters of the Master Gardener program here in Oregon, made a $500,000 gift to up their total contribution and commitment to the Master Gardener program to $1.7 million. In doing so, they established the Y. Sherry Sheng and Spike Wadsworth Master Gardener Endowed Professorship. And this is in addition to a $600,000 planned gift by Bob and Barbara Bailey of Wasco County to also establish a Master Gardener Professorship Fund. These donations created what is literally the first endowed Master Gardener Professorship in the world. A really strong statement of the belief of volunteers and the value of the program. I do need to specify that the majority of these gifts and the way that they're structured are planned gifts, which means that they are not going to be realized anytime soon, we hope, because people have to pass away in order for that to happen, and we don't want that to happen. But what it really has done is send a strong signal to decision makers that people love this program, people are willing to invest in this program, the investments they make are significant, and it really has poised Oregon State University to have what is or will be the best Master Gardener program in the world. I have to talk about COVID as well as how we responded. No State of the State program update in 2020 is complete without talking about COVID. A lot of what I've talked about thus far has been kind of the traditional Master Gardener work and activities, but 2020 has been far from traditional. Just have a little bit of the timeline from the state of Oregon when different executive orders were coming out of the governor's office and the timeline in the Master Gardener program. In March 11th and March 12th, even before the Stay Home Save Lives executive order came out, I was obsessed with reading CDC guidance on COVID-19. It was a little bit of a dread spiral that I started going into. And I really was concerned about close contact in face-to-face Master Gardener classes. We were so lucky that we had the online Master Gardener classes as backup options for folks to complete their training. But then some executive orders were coming out that were suspending large gatherings and even suspending small gatherings. But the one which really affected us at Oregon State University was a suspension of higher education instruction via an executive order. So the way this executive order was written is that it broadly affected higher ed instruction, not just credit classes, but also extension activities. So that it wasn't until June 14th, when this executive order expired, that we've been able to gradually resume face-to-face Master Gardener activities. And we're still in this gradual resumption of face-to-face activities. We're in what OSU Extension calls modified operations. And while we're under modified operations, any request to travel, any request for face-to-face programming needs to be written up and submitted for approval by administration. But we're starting to do more and more things, particularly outdoor things. And I'm sorry, I'm going to pause to take a sip of water real quick. So like I said, COVID-19 had an outside impact on our program in many ways. Master Gardener training classes, many of them were disrupted because COVID restrictions happened in March, and some Master Gardener programs in Oregon don't finish up until April or June. So far, up to this point, almost all counties have been able to finish out their training year using a combination of the online Master Gardener short course modules and/or live training, which were offered via Zoom. We did not anticipate having to use the Master Gardener online modules in this way. Instead, it's usually they're currently being marketed and used by a largely different audience, but we were lucky that they were there to help folks finish out the training year. At the same time that COVID-19 happened, demand for information, gardening information skyrocketed. Like I mentioned, compared to all of last year, in the first 6 months of 2020, we've seen a 17% increase in asking expert questions. And just what started as a simple Facebook post that ended up going viral saw over 40,000 people enroll in our free online vegetable gardening course. So many people enrolled in that course that it crashed the system for a period of time, and we actually got covered by both local and national NPR stations who were really interested in why folks were flocking to gardens as a way to respond to COVID-19. I want to give a shout out to Master Gardener groups who also responded in really novel ways. This is a screen cap from the Clatsop County Master Gardener Association blog. The Clatsop County Master Gardeners had planned to offer seed to supper in their local communities during the COVID-19 stay-at-home order. However, they didn't let the restrictions stop them. Literally, I don't even know who did this, but I loved what they did. They took every part of Seed to Supper and wrote a different blog post on a Seed to Supper lesson for several weeks in a row, really giving their neighbors and local community members an opportunity to go through Seed to Supper via a series of blog posts. At the same time, other Master Gardener groups were using novel methods to satisfy the public's demand for gardening information. The Clackamas County Master Gardeners had long been videotaping presenters on different gardening topics. They've been doing this in collaboration with their local cable news station. They ended up through their 10-minute university program setting up a YouTube page and putting these multiple videos. This is just like a short little screen cap of a few of them in different playlists, and setting up a social media presence to let people know, like, hey, if you want to know about general gardening or soil planting or seed saving or tomatoes or drip irrigation, here's a short video for you. The Benton County Master Gardeners also saw face-to-face Seed to Supper classes canceled due to COVID restrictions. They set up what they called Seed to Supper at Home, where they sent out hard copy packets to folks who were enrolled for the normal Seed to Supper class, and then they videoed via Zoom. They recorded their Zoom presentations just like I'm doing here this evening, and ended up creating a Seed to Supper at Home playlist. This playlist makes the Seed to Supper curriculum broadly available to more Oregonians. And in fact, after Benton County completed this effort, Curry County used these same videos to deliver Seed to Supper in the South Coast. Where we're seeing a real big increase in demand, we're also recognizing that a lot of folks who have never heard of Extension before are coming to Extension for advice and information on gardening. So during the COVID-19 crisis, I saw the Facebook page that I manage go from about 6,000 followers to more than 22,000 followers. This is a screen cap of the insights from the Facebook page, just showing you the type of engagement we get for different posts on that page. On the blue are when folks click on a link, and in the pink is when folks comment or share. So you can see that when Brooke Edmonds created a quick article on whether or not it's safe to eat garden produce affected by wildfires, that more than 20,000 people engaged with that post, more than 3,400 people clicked to read the article, and 389 commented or liked hearted whatever they did. And this is the type of engagement that we're seeing now with the Facebook page. We almost always get at least 1,000 views, oftentimes 3,000 to 5,000, depending upon what the post is, and really good engagement as well. So new audiences are coming to Extension for information, and they're looking to us for gardening advice and information. Other ways that Master Gardener groups have responded to the demand for information by new audiences is they're answering gardening questions in entirely new ways. One of the things that I really like about what the Lynn and Benton County Master Gardeners have done with this extension gardening question and answer session, and it's something that's also been done in the high desert, on the South Coast in Curry County, in Klamath County as well, and I'm probably missing someone else from the Mid-Willamette Valley who participated as well. I apologize. Is they realized that folks wanted some place to turn to ask gardening questions, and Master Gardeners were no longer at farmers markets. But if you're a Master Gardener volunteer, it can be really scary to say, hey, go on Zoom and be ready for any question which is asked of you and be ready to respond. And so what I thought was so lovely about what these colleagues did is that they worked with specific Master Gardener volunteers and said, okay, we're going to focus on a very narrow set of questions. We're going to talk about vegetable gardening. You can have other folks participate as well, so you don't have to be the only one answering and responding to questions. Or we're going to talk about mason bees, or we're going to talk about compost. So by narrowing the topics for these gardening questions and answers, it's a lot easier for someone, whether a Master Gardener or a faculty member, to say like, oh, I feel much more confident about answering questions about entomology, for instance. I would feel confident about answering entomology questions. Where I wouldn't feel as confident answering every single horticulture question that may come my way. So these gardening question and answer sessions were done around the state via Zoom. And what Brooke did is she actually turned the Zoom audio into Spotify podcast so that folks who were not able to attend or maybe don't like looking at a screen all day can get the very same information through an audio podcast. Really need to give a shout out for the Central Gorge Master Gardeners for creating novel solutions for this during this time where we had increased demand for gardening information. They were real innovators in what we're calling virtual plant clinic. When the stay-at-home order occurred, we weren't allowed in our offices. We couldn't check our voicemails. A lot of Master Gardener hotline email addresses are linked to the OSU computer, so Master Gardeners couldn't even get in there to see what questions the public was asking, and they didn't have a way to collaborate with each other to respond to those questions in kind. So under the supervision of Megan Wickersham in Hood River County Master Gardeners, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of the specific Master Gardener who was the true innovator here, created a system on Google where Master Gardeners could collectively see and respond to questions that were coming in from the general public when we were literally locked out of our offices. And this is an innovation that has since been adopted statewide by counties across the state. Other examples of creating novel solutions, we had to get really creative about flexible online opportunities to volunteer within the Master Gardener program. And groups such as the Benton County group came up with a variety of options. You could either do virtual plant clinic. If you didn't feel ready to do actual plant clinic, there was a space where you could practice your plant clinic skills. You could ask your own plant clinic question that fed into the practice system, write a blog post, send in a plant problem show and tell. All of these were innovative options trying to create opportunities to engage in the program when we were not able to get into the office or meet face to face. Pause. I'm going to go over key challenges and looking ahead. So 2020 has seen us reach entirely new audiences as the demand for public gardening information just exploded seemingly overnight. And as we transition to a more online way of doing business. But at the same time that we were reaching new audiences and bringing new people into the Master Gardener program, largely as clients seeking information on gardening issues, we were leaving some old friends behind. When I did a casual ask of Master Gardener coordinators of how many Master Gardener volunteers had failed to engage with the program in one way, shape, or other during this time of COVID, it was about 50%. So then we surveyed Master Gardeners and we asked them, what are the barriers you're facing with engaging with us online? And when I asked this question, this is in no way, shape, or form to say the Master Gardener program is going to be an all online program from now on. My goodness, I hope that's not the case. I'm just trying to be realistic and practical, knowing that COVID has really put so many restrictions in our way, and that the online venue has honestly opened up new doors for new audiences. So a little over 800 people responded, Master Gardeners responded to this survey. 9% said they either had bad internet, or no computer. 1/3 of respondents said that they did not know how to engage online. They didn't know how to attend a class. They didn't know how to volunteer online. 20% said that they were not interested in engaging online whatsoever. And then 38% was really an other category. But when I read through the other category, it was mostly evenly split between folks who said that they did not have a barrier to engaging online, to folks who said, you know, look, I have no time right now. I have a lot of other things on my plate. But still, these folks who many of them who I really do feel are dear friends and longtime Master Gardener volunteers, and I know the Master Gardener program is so special and important to their social network. I felt really bad when we all of a sudden pivoted in this new direction, and there were all of these folks who were not able to engage in kind. So we're trying new things. One of the things that we're trying is this very week right now, Celebrate Master Gardener Week, was really just intended to be hopefully a fun way to connect in a time where we have to be socially distant. I hope that you've had an opportunity to view the films. We've had about 300 people view each film for the one film where I'm keeping count. We've had about 40 people participate in discussions with film directors or with Cigna as the landscape designer each night. And we have over 600 people who've logged into the event page. I just want to put this into a little bit of context. We, at best, have had slightly more than 400 people attend mini college, which is another type of social networking event that we normally do face-to-face, coordinated by the OMGA. So we are getting a fair number of people who are participating. I hope that you've enjoyed the films. I hope that you've enjoyed the discussions, the thank you video. I'll be sending out an evaluation assessment to see whether or not you thought it was worth your time. In terms of trying new things, we're also trying a new approach to Master Gardener training in 2021. And this is really in homage to this understanding that we have greatly expanded the audience of folks who are seeking Master Gardener advice, gardening advice and information, but we've left many folks behind. So in 2021, we're offering what we're calling an elevated Master Gardener training focused on skills building. One of the folks in the event course page asked a couple of questions if they could see some of the classes that we're planning to offer. We're offering a basic and advanced Zoom course that may not be super exciting to you, but I'm hoping it'll help reach part of that 1/3 of the Master Gardener group who really is struggling just even how to join a meeting and to work online. The advanced Zoom course training is one that's going to do double duty, trying to show people how they can step up their Zoom game, but also the 2021 mini college organizing group, as well as some county and region-based Master Gardener groups that are hosting conferences, are asking their moderators and speakers to take this particular training so that they'll understand how they can be a moderator, facilitator, speaker, for a virtual conference. We're going to teach people how to use the tools that are available to them to identify landscape plants, insects, and other fauna. For folks who have yet to engage in virtual plant clinic, we're going to offer a class on how to connect in that way. Amy Jo Detweiler and the Central Oregon Master Gardeners have spent a fair amount of time and energy creating an online and shareable database of plant clinic questions and answers so that you don't always have to create an answer from the ground up on your own, but you can see what other high quality answers to common garden questions are. She's going to be presenting a preview on that. Mary McNamee from Josephine County is going to be presenting a module on best practices in youth gardening. Right now, I'm actually teaching Ent 311 undergraduate entomology at OSU, and for the very first time, I'm using iNaturalist for my virtual insect collection instead of having folks do an actual insect collection. I just wanted to share that honestly, it's transformed the way that I teach entomology. I don't know that I'll ever go back to doing a hard copy insect collection again. It has been such a lovely experience to have a community approach to insect identification. The algorithm of iNaturalist has really gotten so good at being able to identify insects if you take good pictures. My students are interacting with taxonomic experts across the globe to get identifications. It's been a really positive experience for all. Other classes that we're planning are how to put education first within your demo garden, making sure that the demo garden is truly meeting the Master Gardener mission and mandate as a vehicle and tool of outreach to the community. We're planning a module on community science and how Master Gardeners can plug into different community science projects around the state. We actually got really good feedback from the survey from folks wanting to see presentations from other state Master Gardener programs on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Just a note about the community science module for Master Gardeners. This is actually kind of a kick in the pants for me to finish up this community science series of classes that Brooke Edmonds and I started developing quite a long time ago, but we just kind of got stopped. I kind of got stopped, I need to be honest, when other things took over time. So I'm really excited to finish this up and then really help connect Master Gardeners to projects that they could engage in. And quite honestly, Asian giant hornet in Washington state, the reason that those researchers were able to track and find that nest is because they had hundreds of citizens in Whatcom County, Washington, setting out traps so that they could locate the proximal area where that nest could be. And many of those folks who put out traps every single week, starting in July, were Whatcom County Master Gardeners. So the work in citizen science projects are incredibly important. We have Master Gardeners right now in Jackson and Josephine County who've been helping the Oregon Department of Agriculture track and enable them to have the information they need to eradicate gypsy moth from our southern Oregon forest. So I'm excited about that one as well. We want to have classes on using partnerships to broaden outreach to underserved communities. OSU Extension at the overall level of Extension is developing a diversity training for volunteers. That office tells me that that should be ready to go in January in time for our elevated skills training. And then we're also planning a class on inclusive teaching and outreach. I would also like to offer classes on social media for garden outreach, as well as online socially distant plant sales, but I haven't had anyone really step up to say that they wanted to lead those. I'm hoping that might happen and these might still be a possibility. When I tell people that I want to include a class on inclusive teaching and outreach, sometimes folks are like, what does that have to do with gardening? Um, Really, it's about inviting everyone to the table and making sure that everyone feels welcome so that we can all learn and do our best gardening and have a positive experience in the program. And my love of this approach for inclusive teaching and outreach has been really inspired by a class that I took from Alan Alda. I took a class from Alan Alda. You may or may not know, but he has a nonprofit where he teaches scientists as well as medical professionals how to communicate with the general public. And he started this nonprofit after years of hosting NOVA on PBS and talking to scientists and realizing that we're not great science communicators. And in order to get people engaged with the information that you have to share, that we could really learn from the world of improv and theater, and as well as from the world of communications research in order to better connect with audiences. And the whole approach of the ALDA method, the class that I took was actually called Empathy is Key. Communication is a central component of science communication. Empathy is key. Empathy is a central component of science communication. And this class was transformative to me. I cannot say how much it transformed my own teaching, both in the OSU classroom as well as in the extension classroom. For a long time, since I came up through academia with my graduate degrees, my postdoctoral work, and then going through the tenure track and promotional tracks from assistant to associate to full professor. As an academic, a lot of times you're taught that your job is to be the gatekeeper. Like your job is to keep the unworthy people out, that you have to achieve a certain level of knowledge or skill or performance, and only then will you be let in. And so a lot of my teaching up to that point was like really hard test, and I'm going to see how much you learned, and you came in late, no excuse for you, that type of thing. But then going through this 2-day workshop and then also following up with additional readings and practicing a more open approach to teaching and outreach, I've seen the positive reactions in my students. I've seen the positive reactions in extension classrooms, that when you create a welcoming environment, everyone is able to flourish. And I know that master gardeners are amazing people and everyone works hard to create a welcoming environment. But I've also seen sometimes folks do things that they probably don't even mean or recognize. Like Plant Clinic is a really scary place to be the first time, and you're nervous about showing what you know or what you don't know. Like even gentle responses when somebody gets something wrong or makes a recommendation which may not be 100% on point can really do a lot to bring someone along, make their experience positive, and really help them learn in the process. I'm just sharing this tweet because it just really made my day that he retweeted me, he quote retweeted me, Loretta Swit retweeted me as well. I'm hoping that this audience actually knows who Alan Alda and Loretta Swit are, because when I told my own students how excited I was about this, none of them knew who they were, and that just floored me. How could you not know who Alan Alda or Loretta Swit are? Okay, another challenge, and I'm sorry, I know I'm going up to 7 p.m. I only think I have like 5 more slides left. Ask an Expert, this system, which gets a lot of gardening question traffic, is in transition at the national level, and we don't know what that next iteration of Ask an Expert or Ask an Extension is going to be. We do know that we need to get more than 28 people to handle 8,000 gardening questions a year. And so I'm hoping once the dust settles and OSU and National E-Extension have a better understanding of what the next system will be, that we can also provide Master Gardener volunteers opportunities to engage in this system to meet the public's demand for gardening information. I want to finish up by talking about OSU's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, something which is incredibly near and dear to my heart. We've written a couple of blog posts about our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion over the past couple of months, and I think that some people have read those and might have perceived that this is like a Gail Langellotto effort or that this is a Leanne Locker effort. It really has long been a commitment and effort of the Master Gardener program in Oregon. For at least the last 10 years, a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is in the position description of every OSU Extension faculty, staff member, as well as volunteer. In addition, the National Extension Master Gardener Committee has prioritized work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. OSU Strategic Plan 4.0 prioritizes diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as I mentioned, OSU Extension, covering all extension programs, is developing and introductory diversity training for all extension volunteers. So I want to make clear that I am wholly committed to this work within the Master Gardener program, but it is not solely an effort or initiative of the Master Gardener program within Oregon. It spans National Master Gardener, it spans the university, it spans all of extension, and it's been part of our stated work for quite a period of time. In honor of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want you to know a little bit more about where I garden. I'm coming to you tonight from Albany, Oregon. I'm going a little bit late. My husband might plop through when he comes home from work any moment now. I garden in Zone 8B. My garden also rests on the traditional homelands of the Marys River or Ampanifu Band of the Kalapuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to reservations in Western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. And if you haven't seen this type of statement before, this is what's known as a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgement is a way to acknowledge that Indigenous people are active contributors to Oregon, both past and present, that they are part of our community, and that the land that we garden on, the land where we reside, had a history before we came here. I really love gardens as a way to connect people across cultures as well as with our own cultural heritage, and hope that in doing so, it grows collective knowledge of everyone. I just want to show you a little bit about my background as well as one of the programs that we're planning. One of the programs that we're planning to deliver in the summer of 2021 is called The Culture of Gardening, and it's going to be a co-authored program with OSU Food Hero. So the idea behind the culture of gardening is that there are a lot of things that we're great at growing here in Oregon, but there are some things that we may not know how to grow, but might be interested in growing. You know, I count myself in that pool. This is a picture, I shouldn't have put this here because I'm going to tear up, of my mom and dad. Sorry. My grandmom. So, sorry, I've had an emotional day already, and I knew that if I put their photo there that I would tear up. My mom's Filipino. My dad met her when he was in the Coast Guard. They're still married, still alive, 52 years. But I grew up in a Filipino household, and what I grew up eating is probably different than what most of you in this audience might have grown up eating. So, for example, sweet potato leaves can be grown here in Oregon. We know that they're used as ornamental plants in many potted containers. I'm not telling you to go out and eat ornamental sweet potato leaves because they've been bred for beauty and not for flavor. However, those same sweet potato leaves are what we call camote, and it's a big part of the traditional diet from where my mom is from in the Bicol region of the Philippines. So camote leaves are cooked up very much like spinach. You cook them in coconut milk. It's delicious. You can grow them here. It's something that you should try eating because it's actually pretty easy to do in containers. You just need to have some support because it is a vine and it is going to grow up. But they're so prolific, so productive, and maybe you would like to eat camote leaves too. This particular dish is called layang. Um, it's very delicious, and I have no tissues here. And this is being recorded. This is awful. Okay. Um, Another plant which is near and dear to my heart is actually taro leaves, which can be grown here in Oregon. This is an article from the Oregonian called Go Bold with Bulbs, and one of the bulbs that they included was elephant ears, which is taro. So this is not elephant ears. Elephant ears is like a big tropical plant. It looks like big heart-shaped leaves. It grows here in Oregon. You do need a lot of space, and it is the source of what we call gabi. And gabi is like another vegetable that we love to eat in the Philippines. Um, if you do eat it, you need to understand how to prepare it using indigenous methods because otherwise it can give like a little itch in the throat. But it's once again, it's delicious, and I really miss it. It's one of the things I missed about home when I came to Oregon is just really the foods that are my home are not here, but they can be grown here if you have a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of patience, and in some cases, a little bit of season protection. And so I'm hoping that by sharing my culture with you, that maybe that will be interesting and you can expand your plant palette. Or maybe there may be new immigrants to Oregon who would be interested in growing different foods that are not easy to purchase here in Oregon. So in May and June of 2021, in collaboration with Food Hero, we are going to offer a Culture of Gardening series. The Culture of Gardening series is going to include 1 to 2 keynote speakers. Already confirmed is Abra Lee, who's going to be presenting on either May 18th or the 20th. We haven't nailed it down yet. Abra Lee is an ornamental horticulture professional who has been a fellow at Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania, and she has an upcoming book on African American gardens coming out in Timber Press. In addition to the 1 to 2 keynotes, Abra being the one confirmed keynote, I'm working on somebody else as a second keynote, are going to be 2 to 4 presentations co-authored with Food Hero at Oregon State University on how to grow and prepare culturally relevant vegetables. We've collaborated with Food Heroes for many years to help them develop their Garden Monthly series. Now we're starting to focus on what are some culturally relevant vegetables that we can include in this series. The whole idea between these shorter presentations is it will have a short segment on how do you grow this vegetable or herb, and then a short segment by the Food Hero folks on how you prepare that vegetable or herb in a snack or a meal. In addition, there's been a big interest by the home horticulture faculty to offer horticulture classes beyond the Culture of Gardening classes. These are going to be coordinated and offered by a separate group of home hort faculty just because my plate's a little full. I'm obviously feeling overwhelmed and can't do it all. So I'm really glad that they stepped up to lead the charge to offer horticulture classes, specifically ornamental horticulture classes. So in closing, I just want to thank you for all you do for your communities. I want to thank you for being willing to try new things. I want to thank you for bringing goodness into the world by growing something positive through gardening. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I really do believe that gardening can save the world and that the choices that you make as a gardener really do matter. I believe that anyone can garden and that gardening is for everyone. That gardens are a great way to connect us to the planet, our food, each other, across generations, and as well as to ourselves in a way that few other spaces can offer. I believe that gardening is a great teacher where the lessons include patience, joy, resilience, camaraderie, work, and play. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and start working through the Q&A. I can see that there are 62 comments in the chat box, but I'm going to go straight to Q&A. So if you have a question, then please put it in the Q&A. And if at any time you've decided you've had enough, it's not class where I'm taking attendance, feel free to log off. I know I've gone over time. Deborah's asking, what is my vision for social justice in Master Gardeners? Well, I believe strongly that gardening is for everyone and that we are in a great place to create a space where anyone can be part of our program, where we take a hard look at where we might have been underserving our communities and make specific efforts to provide services to those communities. I believe strongly in the power of partnerships, that there are a lot of organizations who have been doing this hard work really well for many, many years. And rather than charging in and saying like, we're master gardeners, we're here to help, I really look forward to partnering with our partner organizations to do the good work that needs to be done. Thank you for correcting me, Tim. Scientific American Frontiers was Ellen Alda's show and not NOVA. I apologize for that. So Amy's asking, when I say that volunteer hours need to be turned in, that's only for perennial master gardeners. That's for anyone who has logged master gardener hours this year, whether it is new master gardeners in the class of 2020 or master gardeners that have been longtime master gardeners. If you have logged any master gardener hours, service hours this year, please turn them in so that they can be counted. If you don't have hours to turn in this year, I understand it's been a crazy year, but if you do have them, then please do turn them in. Thank you, Sandy, for telling me that Christy Bradley was the tech innovator for virtual plant clinic in the Central Gorge. What happened to mini college in 2019? In 2019, I think, and the OMGA can correct me, but it has been difficult to get people to step up to the plate to organize mini college. Like, it's been really difficult over the last several years, so much so that the same individuals have been organizing mini college for like 3 or 4 times in a row. I think that the decision was made to take a pause on 2019 since it coincided with the International Master Gardener Conference, and then take that extra year to have additional time to plan for the event. But the OMGA officers can correct me if I am incorrect. Vicky's noting that she couldn't access the 5 seasons film. Will you be able to watch the recording this week? Yes. Vicki, if you haven't been able to access it, then reach out to me directly. Gail.Langellotto at OregonState.edu. Sometimes we found that if you clear your cookies then that clears it up so that you can access the film after you've had several failed attempts to access it. But reach out to me directly and I will try to walk through that. Jen is mentioning that for the plant diagnosis webinar that you had to do questions and research in advance, and that was supposed to count for continuing education hours. Do we need to report those hours somewhere? Yes. So you don't need to, but I would like it if you do, because then we get a more accurate accounting of what's been going on in the Master Gardener program for the past year. Depending upon your county, most counties use the volunteer reporting service, the VRS, but those in the Portland metro area use a different service, which is known as Service, CERVIS. So please report with your local Master Gardener program and coordinator. So Nancy was asking if there's an existing document that explains the roles and responsibilities of the OSU Extension Program coordinators, program assistants, and master gardeners. So yes, on the document, which is required reading for all new Master Gardener volunteers, it's called an Introduction to Being a Master Gardener Volunteer. On page 21, there's a high-level table of roles and responsibilities for OSU Extension and the Master Gardener Associations. And then in the required module for all new Master Gardener volunteers, also called an Introduction to Being a Master Gardener Volunteer, in sections 3 and 4, there's an overview of roles and responsibilities of program coordinators, education program assistants, and volunteers. And Nancy, I did email that to you so that you would have the links directly. And if others would like those as well, then I can put together a list of links referred to in this presentation. Is there any conversation about whether the International Master Gardener Conference will still take place in 2021? I believe the conversation is that it is still going to take place. There may have even been a decision that it's going to go virtual, but I don't know that for sure. It's going to take place one way or the other, whether it's face-to-face in Virginia or whether or not they need to transition to a virtual format. Schwan is mentioning that some folks aren't comfy with online events. Are there resources for some of us who are challenged by technology? We're trying to develop that specifically through the basic and advanced Zoom courses. If there are specific technology things which you think that Master Gardeners would benefit from knowing more about specific technological tools, then Siobhan, please email me like what those would be, and we'll see if we can develop them out as well. The challenge is, of course, that we're delivering them online instead of face-to-face, but we're hoping that with knowledge of screen shares and being able to do screen shares, as well as having written materials to guide folks through, that it'll help folks become more comfortable navigating the online environment. Nancy's asking, when will the Zoom class take place? So we're planning to offer the elevated skills training in February and March of 2021. The Culture of Gardening series is going to be May and June of 2021. And then the horticulture classes that are being planned by the Home Horticulture Working Group, I initially proposed having one starting every month of the year starting in January, but they may ultimately decide to do something a little bit different. I think they talked about doing perhaps a couple more classes in the dark days of winter to really give people something horticultural and gardening to latch onto. Nicole is reminding me that tomorrow night at 6 p.m. she is hosting the Beneficial Insect Trivia event. So please don't forget to sign up for the trivia event if you want to participate using Slido and Zoom. Jen is asking, is there anything yet that the class of 2020 can do for volunteer hours? That is really county specific, what the volunteer opportunities are available to you. Every county should have an option for volunteerism at this point. I don't think that counties are currently under um, restricted protocols from OSU Extension. And even if those are, we do have opportunities to engage in the online environment with various volunteer opportunities. So please reach out to your local program coordinator and ask them what volunteer opportunities are available to you. And yes, even as somebody who's in the class of 2020 may not have fully graduated yet, we definitely want to engage you with the program and offer opportunities for you to connect with the program. Okay, folks, those are the questions that I have. I see 81 comments in chat. Trying to see if I missed anything here. Okay. I don't think so. Well, with that, I want to thank you for taking time out of your evening. Going to stop recording.